Are you a busy surgeon who struggles to stay consistent with your fitness and nutrition routine? Stay tuned. In this video, I'm going to be going off the cuff. I've got some notes here to kind of keep me on track, make sure that I touch on all my points. But this video, my goal is to break down my framework I use for high performing surgeons just like you to get the results that you're looking for without needing more time, more motivation, and honestly, more complex routines. So in this video, what you're going to learn, one, you're going to learn why most fitness and nutrition plans fail surgeons. Two, you're going to have a simple 3-step framework to build out a custom plan that you can stick to that'll be applicable to your fitness in this video, but in reality, you can apply it to your nutrition and any other healthy habits that you're trying to instill into your daily or weekly routine. I'm also going to give you a real world example of an orthopedic surgeon that I'm working with on the West Coast to give you insight on what we did for his routine and where he started at. Chances are you're in very similar shoes, and this will be very beneficial for you to actually listen to the actual example of a surgeon who I've worked with. And then the final thing that we're going to cover, I'm sorry, again, off the cuff, trying to stick to my notes. What to do when you're on call. That's going to be the fourth thing that we're going to touch on. And then finally, what to do when you miss a session. The reality is that those days happen. You end up on call, operating day goes longer than you anticipated to, you're exhausted, you didn't get good sleep the night before. Things happen, right? So I want to have you confident that when you do miss a day, as long as it's not a frequent thing, that's a whole different discussion. But from time to time, on occasion, you happen to miss a session. What do you do when that happens? Okay. So first off, why most fitness and nutrition plans fail surgeons? Number one thing is it doesn't factor in your schedule. From my experience from talking with enough surgeons and doing consults and working with surgeons, the number one complaint that they have is whether they're working privately with the trainer, whether that be online or in person, or they just have a group fitness class that they typically do or make it to when they can. The biggest complaint is if it's with a private trainer, they don't really get my schedule. They don't understand. And I'll explain what that means in a second. Or if it's the group fitness thing, the schedule just doesn't really go with their operating schedule. So the times, they may even have times when they're available, but then you look at the logistics of getting to and from that particular location to do group fitness class, it doesn't mesh. And honestly, even with group fitness, that's going to be, if you do that, that could be something that can be a good complementary physical activity that you do in addition to a custom plan for you, but it's not going to deliver the same type of results. But going back to the idea of the trainer giving you advice or coaching that doesn't jive with your schedule. I'll give you an example. I was talking with an orthopedic surgeon in Louisville, and he was working with a private trainer at the time. And one of his biggest complaints was the nutrition advice that the trainer gave this particular individual. And one of the things that he was really frustrated with is the trainer was telling him that he had to eat more frequently. He told me, his exact words was, "No, you don't understand. I am literally operating all day. It's back-to-back operations. I don't have the time to do that." And what the trainer said was, "Well, then I guess you just don't want the results that bad," which is absolute bullshit. And I can believe that they said that, because I know how my industry operates. There are a lot of great coaches in my industry, but there's way more, times that by 10, and you'll have that many bad trainers for every good trainer that you're able to find. So that didn't surprise me. But the bottom line is they're not taking, whether it's nutrition, whether it's fitness, whatever it might be, they're not taking your schedule into consideration and actually having a conversation to get a better understanding of what that looks like so that they can craft a plan that works for you, right? The second thing with that, of why fitness and nutrition plans fail surgeons, is too many trainers are only as good as what they've been taught, and they can't critically think. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of, leaders in my industry, they have their certifications and books and everything like that. And again, I sound like a hater when I say that stuff, because there is some really good educational leaders within my industry, but there's a lot of charlatans as well. And what happens is sometimes when these other trainers that are trying to learn, I respect that, I admire that, they learn from us, and then they take those words that they learn, whether it be through text, taking a course, or whatever it might be, certification, and they take it as gospel, and they can't think outside of that box. So it's a combination of not having a good filter for information and also not having enough experience to understand that you'll plug this stuff in that you learn, and eventually you'll learn that it doesn't apply across the board, and it only applies with some of the population, and it only applies till it doesn't work with the person that's in front of you. Then you got to strategize and figure out what is going to work for this individual. So that's the biggest thing second biggest thing that I see of why fitness and nutrition plans fail surgeons is just because they don't have coaches that they're working with that can think outside the box, get creative with their program design. Program design in my field is very black and white. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing things, but generally what happens is trainers get married to a certain way of doing things, and they think that that's the only way that we can get strong, that we can build muscle, that we can alleviate chronic aches and pains. Whatever the intended goal of that training is, they tend to think that there's only a certain way to do it. And the reality is there's a lot of different ways to do it. And we have to be creative in the ways that we deliver that to our clients, especially a surgeon, given all the constraints that you have in your life. Most fitness and nutrition plans fail surgeons is the plans to focus on what the trainer believes to be right rather than what's right for the client. And again, that kind of goes back to my last point with being pigeonholed in this box, and you can't think outside of that box. I have a lot of the stuff I do for myself is much different than what I have to do for my clients. Like if you look at it in the grand scheme of things of like how I program, whether that's duration of my sessions, intensity of my sessions, lift selection, I've got very specific goals. A lot of it pertains to, obviously I want to look good, but mostly I want to feel good. So as long as I'm consistently working out 6 to 7 days a week, that's when I feel my best. So I make sure that I'm doing that first and foremost. Then I want to look good. Yes. Then third, I want to be performing at a high level or to the best of my abilities that I possibly can, specifically when I play basketball. So I'm 5'9", not the most athletic dude, but as time has gone on and I figured out this training thing, I touched rim for the first time in my life when I was 32. I'm 39 right now, and now I can grab rim. So give that as an example of how my athleticism has actually improved as I've gotten older, which is contrary to how it goes for the majority of individuals. But that all to share, not to sit there and say, oh, look at me, but more so, I'm not taking what I do and pushing it on all my clients. I meet my clients where they're at, and there'll be elements of what I do that I implement with that client, but ultimately their program is going to look quite a bit different than mine unless their body's ready for what I throw at my body and they have similar goals. Okay. So that concludes everything with why I see most fitness and nutrition plans fail for surgeons. Now, the next thing, the simple 3-step framework to build out a custom plan that you can stick to. And like I said, this isn't just limited to fitness. This applies across the board, whatever you're trying to achieve. But look at the number of days per week. We're going to talk specifically about fitness. Number of days per week that you can commit to realistically, okay? Duration of each session. How long can you realistically commit to? Don't sit there and say, I'm going to work out for 60 minutes. If that only is true that you have 60 minutes to get a workout in, 1 day a week, don't sit there and say you're going to do it 4 days a week. That's just not reality, right? We can get a lot done and accomplish a lot in the amount of time that you actually have, right? So be realistic about that. And with those two things, I want at least 80% confidence. So I use this 80% rule. You got to be at least 80% confident, scale on 1 to 10, at least an 8, that you're going to be able to successfully follow through on this. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody and we're trying to figure out like the number of days that they're going to work out, and I say, how about, does 3 days a week sound doable to you? And they go, yeah, I could do that. Okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you could follow through with that? And if they say anything less than an 8, then it's like we don't focus on 3 days per week, because the likelihood of that happening right now dramatically drops. I want to have something that we're confident we can consistently knock out of the park, so we can start accumulating some good, fast wins, start building your confidence up a little bit, get that consistency there, and then we can build on that. So maybe we go with 2 days instead of 3 days a week. That conversation that I'm having, I just throw out 2 days a week to the surgeon. Are you 80% confident you can do that? Yeah, I'm 80%. I'm 90% confident I can do that. Great. That's where we're going to start. We'll build that consistency, build your confidence, get some wins, and then we'll build from there, eventually adding 3. And then maybe 3 becomes 4. This takes time. It's not built overnight. Like we need to start in a good place where you can build that consistency, because ultimately it's going to be consistency over time that helps you win. The duration of this session, same thing. It's like, realistically, what's the maximum amount of time that you have per session? Okay. Then we just ask the same questions. Okay. So you're 80% confident that you have 45 per minutes per session. Is that for all in this situation, we agreed on 2 days. For those 2 days, you're confident you get 2 45-minute sessions in? Okay, great. We're going to roll with that. Okay. There might be other days too where you don't have to necessarily do 45 minutes every time. Maybe you only have time for 15 minutes. We can focus on other things within that 15 minutes that help complement your efforts to, lose weight, improve your body composition. So you're stripping away body fat, building lean muscle, getting stronger. Like those are all things that we can do. There's not a set amount of time that has to be spent on those particular areas in order to achieve those things, and then see them carry over in your day-to-day life, where you're noticing that your body doesn't ache as much during and after operating, right? Your recovery time between operations is faster. You're able to do things with your kids that without feeling like your body got hit by a truck, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can do this, but the most important thing is that we're crafting it to the reality of your life, and it allows you to be consistent. Number one thing, consistency over time gets you the results that you want. Okay. So there's your little framework. Well, I'm sorry, I almost forgot one thing. Schedule your days. That's the other thing. Make sure it's on your schedule as if it was a meeting or an operation. Do not treat this as like, I'll get it in when I can, because I guarantee you what's going to happen. Time and time again, I see it gets pushed to the end of the week, and before you know it, you're so burned out by the end of the week that it just doesn't happen. So make sure you're scheduling those days. Okay. Now, I said I was going to have a real world example of a client, and I got this orthopedic surgeon I'm working with. We're on the West Coast, married with 2 kids. His wife's also a surgeon. And so, very busy schedule, very demanding schedule. Got 2 little ones at home. They're, under 10 years old. And so when he came to me, we had a combination of a lot of different things, a lot of different moving pieces here that we had to take into consideration. I've already mentioned some of them, right? We look at very busy, young kids. Wife is also a surgeon, so she's also very busy. So that makes an interesting family dynamic, right? He might be on call one week, she might be on call the next week. So, we got those things to take into consideration. Then we look at injuries, right? Torn ACL, like from a few years back. Pelvic floor, had some issues with that a couple years ago. We needed to make sure that we were addressing that. And so I take these injury history, I take a look at those limitations. And then I look at like what his goals are and all the things that we just talked about. So we looked at the number of days. We looked at the schedule to schedule those days, schedule those workouts on specific days, with the ability to understand that some weeks his schedule might change a little bit. We'll still get those workouts in, but we have a discussion on, hey, do we need to make changes to the week? And if so, what days do we need to modify? Okay. But looking at all those things coming together, what we ultimately had for him was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday strength training focus. He's got a home gym, and that's something I highly encourage you, if you have the room at your home, to be able to build out a home gym. And it's not one of the major selling points for you is not the social side of fitness. I'm totally for that social side of fitness, but that requires you driving to and from a gym where people are at in order to be social. So if that's not a huge priority for you, even more reason to have a home gym. But if you have the space and the desire to get one in your home, 100% put it there, because it creates less resistance to getting in the habit of making working out a consistent part of your routine. Okay. So this guy literally can walk out his door and in, 15 feet, he's in his home gym. Right. So we got that set up Monday, Wednesday, Friday for his lifts in his home gym. He's got a complete warm up that he does that addresses all the limitations that he has from a movement standpoint, which we assessed in the initial evaluation, the initial intake. I got a movement portion of the assessment that I have people do. Then based on what I see, what they tell me their injury history is, I have interventions that we'll do during the assessment, and then see if those exercises work as far as alleviating symptoms or improving movement quality. That becomes a part of the warm up. And also with his warm up, we got some foam rolling and soft tissue work with a lacrosse ball to address any areas that are running into stiffness. So, and preventing, which will ultimately prevent like good movement. So we want to make sure that we're doing a combination of those exercises plus soft tissue work. So that's his warm up. We got the strength training Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Saturday's a cardio day. And that right now he wants to get back into running. We're not running right now, but he's using various modalities for his cardio fitness. I set the guidelines of what his target heart rate should be during those workouts, the duration of those workouts, and he goes ahead and executes. We agreed that right now it's going to be kind of, he's going to have a lot of autonomy as far as choosing what he does. I encouraged him to be consistent with a specific modality that he does on those days. Right now it's a combination of things, but over time as he gets this consistency habit gets built, then we'll get more specific with the modality. And again, with his goal of getting back to running, eventually that'll turn into running. But for now, we're just using a number of different things like, rowing on the rower, the Concept 2 rower. He's doing the bike. So we got some different things that we're working with there. So the way that works is week by week, there'll be progressions built in within the program as far as his reps, his weights each week. I touch in on Sunday and I let him know. I look back on what he did for the previous week for his weights and his reps. I give him guidelines to follow to help increase there for the upcoming week. And then after 4 weeks, we'll start a new block of training that'll build on that previous 4-week block that we just did. Okay. So that's an example of an actual client that I'm working with, given all his limitations, things that we take into consideration when building out that program. Now, the next point, what do you do when you're on call? This can be the most challenging thing for surgeons I see is when they're on call. And generally, most of the surgeons I see, though, most of them are on call for a week. And then, occasionally they'll be like, hey, one night that they end up on call to fill in for somebody. So when you run into these things and time's even more limited, what I want you to do is you're going to focus on the part of your workout that gives you the most return of your investment of your time. So for example, going back to that previous client, I've got his strength training days broken into 3 different blocks. There's block 1, block 2, and block 3. Block 1 is going to be a combination of core and building up the athletic qualities such as explosive strength, reactive strength, things like that are going to help prep his body for the stress that he's going to place on it in the future when he starts running. I want his body as prepared as much as possible for that. So that's why I've got that in block 1 along with the core work. Block 2, it's going to be a combination of strength and muscle hypertrophy. Okay. So that block 2, that's a 15-minute block that he would have dedicated to those 2 qualities. And they're going to be with 2 different lifts that he's doing, an upper body lift and a lower body lift. And then block 3 will be 1 set of some direct like muscle hypertrophy work. So for him, if he's on call and we're running into that, that issue of where there's not a lot of time, we got to take a look at those 3 blocks and which one is going to be most beneficial toward his goals. It's going to be block 2. So it'll be like, okay, go ahead, Luke, get block 2 in. Don't worry about block 1 this week. Don't worry about block 3. If it ends up working out to where you have additional time, go ahead and add 1 or both of those blocks in if you got the time for it, but put that emphasis on block 2 and that's it. Okay. The other thing that you can do, you can keep all those blocks, but you could cut back on your volume for the week and focus on your consistency. So volume meaning we might scale back on the number of sets that we do, right? We could scale back. I'm not a huge fan of scaling back on the weight. So I would say more so just focus on the sets more than anything. Keep your reps consistent. Just decrease the amount of sets you do. That'll cut back on your time that you need to get the job done with what you have available or what you have written for you on your program, or if you're creating your own program. So that would be the second thing that you can do when you're on call. And the final thing that you can do when you are on call, especially if you're going to end up, like if movement just ends up being less overall, like you're getting less steps, which depending on how your call situation is set up, if you're at the hospital, if you're waiting to be called into the hospital, your step count could either go up or down. If you're cutting back on your volume with your workouts, you're not going to have as great of caloric expenditure. Okay. So maybe cutting back on your calories, but keep your protein intake high. So for example, let's say you're at 2,000 calories and you're shooting for 170 grams of protein per day. Okay. In this scenario, cut your calories back by 200 to 300 calories. So you're around 17 to 1800, but keep that protein intake at the same level. So we're still at that 170 mark. Okay. Now, the final thing I'm going to touch on, what to do when you miss a session and how to bounce back fast. Okay. First of all, I already touched on like way early in the call, have a plan that's customized to your needs, goals, and schedule, because then it takes the guesswork off. It takes the guesswork out. It takes the stress of trying to figure out how to get back on track. You already know, like you look at your schedule as far as what your workouts are for the week. Okay, I missed this workout. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get that one done. And then I see this other day where I can fit it in on a day I normally wouldn't work out because of my schedule allows for it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. Right? You don't have to sit there and guess. You don't have to sit there and stress. It's all done for you. So make sure you have a plan that's customized to your needs, goals, and your schedule. Okay. Second thing, don't dwell on it. Shit happens. This is a long game. Don't necessarily think there. I just said you could go ahead if you get that plan built out, but let's pretend that you don't have a plan built out. You might be sweating that you missed that one workout. Don't sit here and stress over making it up like it's an absolute. Okay. Move on, get back in the game, get back on track. Don't sweat that one workout that you missed. Final thing is you have to understand this is a process and a lifelong commitment. This isn't something you do over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, next couple of years, and you call it a day. I've yet to meet a surgeon who doesn't have that long-term outlook as far as like what their life looks like 10, 20, 30 years down the road, because oftentimes their body's already starting to feel that way. They realize, hey, I gotta figure something out here that's going to help me not only feel good now, but make sure that my body is capable when, I'm in my 50s, my 60s, my 70s, and you're in those retirement years and supposed to be enjoying your life. And you don't want to be in a position where you're not able to enjoy yourself or, keep up with your kids, keep up with your grandkids. Playing an active role there, traveling the world with your spouse. Like these are the things that I've seen the surgeons that get into their latter years, they really enjoy. And the younger surgeons that I'm working with, they put an emphasis on not being in a position where they're basically a prisoner to their own life because they didn't take the action when they were younger to put themselves in place to be able to live that life that they, all those things that I just mentioned of being able to keep up the kids, keep up the grandkids, not living every single day in chronic aches and pains, and be able to actually be a participant in their life rather than somebody that's watching on the sidelines and everybody that they love and care about be active while they're just kind of hanging back. So that's my, framework right there, my 5 things that I wanted to touch on today. So just to recap, we went over why the most fitness and nutrition plans fail for surgeons. We had that 3-step framework to help you build out a customized plan that you can stick to. Gave you the real world example of an actual surgeon that I work with and what his plan looks like, what to do when you're on call and what to do when you miss a session and how to bounce back fast. Again, I just spit this off the cuff. I'm going to make these videos better. They're going to be produced better. They're going to have higher quality. But the main thing is I just wanted to get started and start delivering longer form content for you to digest, for you to think about, to open up discussions with you guys, because I want to be able to be here to be a resource for you, to help you through this entire process, to help you through your career and have the work that you put into your health and fitness transfer to not only what you do in the operating room, but also with your families and the activities that you enjoy doing with them. So appreciate your attention, and I look forward to catching you on the next video.